I never thought I'd hear my own children tell me I was useless, but that morning, I did. I was standing in the living room, my own living room, when my daughter-in-law pointed at me like I was some unwanted guest. "You don't matter anymore," she said. "You're old. Just sign the papers so we can handle everything." My son didn't say a word. My daughter looked away, and I stood there frozen, the pen shaking in my hand. They wanted me to sign over the house, the land, the savings, everything my wife and I built over 40 years. I asked them quietly, "Why are you doing this?" My son sighed like I was a burden. "Dad, stop being dramatic. You can't handle things now. Let us manage your property. Just sign." Property? Not our home, not your mother's dream, just property. And then something inside me shattered. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply placed the pen on the table. My daughter-in-law smirked, thinking she had already won. She whispered to my son, loud enough for me to hear, "Once the house is in our name, we'll finally renovate this old place." Old place, old man, old father. They had already decided who I was. As I walked to my room, I heard her say one more thing. He should be grateful we're even giving him a room here. Giving me a room in the house I bought. That night, I stared at the ceiling, wondering where I went wrong. Had I raised selfish children, or had I been too soft, too trusting? But the truth came later, a truth even they didn't expect, because while they thought I was weak and old and easy to control, I had a secret their mother left behind, a secret the lawyer had been holding for years, a secret that didn't just change the inheritance, it changed everything. And by the time they discovered it, I was no longer fighting to keep a room in my own house. I was signing papers to buy a $9 million resort, and that was only the beginning. I still remember that morning like a wound that hasn't stopped bleeding. The house was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that tells you something is wrong before anyone speaks. My son, Adil, had called me into the living room, saying he needed to discuss something important. I thought maybe he wanted advice, maybe he wanted to share good news, but when I walked in, the air felt different, cold, heavy, stiff. My daughter-in-law, Sana, was sitting on the sofa, legs crossed, chin up like she was the queen of a kingdom I apparently didn't belong in anymore. Adil stood beside her, holding a bunch of papers. My daughter, Sarah, was also there, but she looked uncomfortable, glancing at the floor. Adil cleared his throat. "Dad, we need to talk about the house." I gave a small nod. "What about it?" Sana didn't wait for him. "We want to transfer it into Adil's name. It's easier to manage everything. You're getting older. Why carry so much burden? Older." Burden, these words hit me harder than any slap. Adil stepped forward and handed me the papers, his voice calm but distant. "Dad, it's just a formality. Sign it and we'll handle everything. You don't need to stress in your age, my age," I asked quietly. Sana scoffed. "Well, yes, it's not like you'll be able to manage property much longer. Let Adil handle it now. It's time. Time to surrender everything I built, everything my wife and I worked for." I looked at Sarah. She avoided my eyes. I looked back at Adil. His face was blank, not cruel, but selfish. "What if I don't want to sign?" I asked. Adil sighed sharply. "Dad, stop being difficult. You don't understand how things work anymore. The house has to be under someone responsible." "Someone responsible, meaning, not me." Sana leaned forward. "Look, it's simple. Sign the papers and live peacefully. We'll take care of you. Isn't that what you want? Take care of me, as if I was some child." I placed the papers on the table. "I need time." I said. "You don't." Sana snapped. "Just sign it, now." And then the words that broke something inside me. "You're too old to matter in these decisions." My hand shook, not from weakness, but from anger I hadn't felt in years. I stood up, looked at my children, both of them, and said, "I'll think about it." I walked to my room, feeling their eyes burning into my back. The moment I shut the door, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. With a tone I had never heard before. "Sir," he said, "we need to talk immediately. It's about your wife's will." Before calling the lawyer back, I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling slightly, not from age, but from betrayal. How did we reach this point? How did my children start seeing me not as their father, but as an obstacle? I looked around my room. The faded photographs on my wall suddenly felt heavier. A picture of my wife smiling on our 25th anniversary. A picture of little Adil holding my finger as he learned to walk. Sarah hugging her mother, giggling with missing front teeth. Memories carved into time. This house wasn't just property. It was a life, a legacy. I closed my eyes, and memories pulled me back to simpler days. Days when my wife and I worked side by side. She was always wiser than me, always thinking ahead. When I got tired, she pushed harder. When I worried, she planned for tomorrow. I used to joke that she thought 10 years into the future. Now, I wondered if that was true. I finally gathered myself and called the lawyer back. "Sir," he said immediately, "are you alone?" "Yes." "There is something your wife left behind, something your children don't know about." My heart skipped. "What is it?" "It's complicated. But before I explain, you need to come to my office. It's better if we talk in person." I agreed to meet him in the evening. For the next few hours, I tried to act normal around the house, but the atmosphere had changed. Adil avoided me completely. Sana walked past me as if I were invisible. Sarah peeked into my room once, eyes full of guilt, but she didn't step in. Later in the afternoon, I found something I hadn't expected. A sealed envelope. It was tucked inside my old drawer, one I rarely opened. My wife's handwriting was unmistakable. My heart began to race as I picked it up. The envelope was yellowed with age, but her name, my name, were written clearly. For a moment I wanted to open it immediately, but my hands froze. What if it contained answers? What if it held secrets? What if she had seen this coming? I slipped the envelope into my pocket and quietly left the house. As I stepped out, I heard Sarah calling, "Dad." "Wait." But before she could say anything, Sana's voice cut through the hallway. "Let him go. He'll come back when he's ready to sign." They thought I was weak. They thought they had already won. They had no idea what was inside that envelope. On my way to the lawyer's office, I stopped at a small park, sat on a bench, and held the unopened envelope tightly. My wife had passed away 2 years ago, but right now, it felt like she was sitting beside me. I slowly opened it. Inside was a single letter, "My love." It began in her familiar, careful handwriting. "If you are reading this, it means something in our family has started to break." My throat tightened. She had known. She had felt the distance growing long before I did. She wrote about her fears, how she worried that our children were becoming too focused on money, how Sana influenced Adil, how she feared that one day I would be pressured, manipulated, or even pushed aside. "I have taken steps to protect you." The letter continued, "If they ever try to take what is yours, contact our lawyer. He knows everything." I stared at those words for a long time. Steps to protect me? What steps? My mind was spinning when I finally reached the lawyer's office. He greeted me with a serious expression. "Sir, your wife left a secondary will, not the official one your children know about. Another one, a private one." I felt the room tilt. He continued, "It includes property your children don't know exists, land investments, shares, even a development project she was working on quietly." I couldn't breathe for a moment. "She wanted to make sure you would always be in control," he added. "In control, not begging for a room in my own house." The lawyer then paused, "And there's something else, something large, something life-changing." He slid a sealed file across the table. "Before I show you this," he said, "you must understand something. Your wife anticipated everything that is happening now." My hands trembled as I reached for the file. "What is inside it?" I asked. He looked at me with steady eyes. "Proof that the property your children want you to sign doesn't even belong to them. It belongs entirely to you. There are legal documents they have never seen. Documents that could destroy their plans instantly." My heartbeat thundered in my chest. I opened my mouth to ask more, but before I could my phone buzzed. A message from Adil. "Dad, we all need to talk. Now. It's urgent." Another message came seconds later, from Sana. "If you don't sign the house papers today, we will take legal action." Legal action. Against me, their own father. I looked at the lawyer. He looked at me. And then he said the words that froze me. "You must prepare yourself. This is only the beginning." After that tense meeting with the lawyer, I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare I hadn't even known I was in. The documents he handed me were thick and official looking, stamped with legal seals and signatures from years ago. My wife, Amina, had been clever. She had made 2 wills, The one my children knew about. The official will was carefully written to avoid suspicion, but the secret will, it contained everything important: property, investments, even a resort project she had quietly purchased years ago. The lawyer explained the details. Your wife wanted to make sure you always had control, no matter what happened. I held the papers close, feeling both empowered and scared. Empowered because finally I had proof. Scared because I knew what this meant for my children. I thought about Adil and Sana. They wanted to push me out, to erase me from everything I worked for. But now, I had the power to stop them. That night, I sat alone in my dimly lit room, reading every word, every clause. There was a strange mix of sadness and relief in my heart. Sadness because my own children saw me as a burden. Relief because Amina's foresight could save me, but the battle was far from over. The next morning, I called Adil. Dad, why are you dragging this? Just sign the papers and move on. I didn't reply. Instead, I told him, you're wrong. I'm in control now. There was silence on the other end, then his voice, sharp and cold. You don't know what you're getting into. Let me warn you. This will only make things worse. I realized that the war had only just begun. The house felt colder after that call. Sana's attitude became more aggressive, and Adil's silence turned into threats. One evening, as I sat quietly in the living room, Sana stormed in, her voice sharp like a knife. You're wasting your time with that old will. Nobody cares about your secret papers. I stared at her. Why are you so angry? Because you're ruining everything. The family is tired of your drama. Sign the papers, or we'll take the house by force. She laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the empty walls. Adil wasn't far behind. He avoided looking me in the eye but demanded the house keys. Give me the keys, Dad. You're only making this harder for everyone. But I stayed calm. I will not give you the keys, not until this is resolved legally. Behind the scenes, Sana started whispering to family friends, painting me as a stubborn old man. She told them I was losing it, that I was too old to handle anything. Even some close friends began to distance themselves. I realized they were isolating me to break me down, but the lawyer kept reminding me, don't engage in arguments, stay strong, let the law protect you. One afternoon, an urgent letter arrived from the lawyer. It said the children were trying to freeze my bank accounts and file false claims about my mental health. I felt my blood boil. They weren't just greedy, they were willing to destroy me. Determined not to be cornered, I asked the lawyer to dig deeper. What we found stunned me. My wife had quietly bought multiple parcels of land in our area over the years, some in her name, some jointly, all carefully documented in the secret will. But that wasn't all. There was an old resort on the outskirts of the city, a property she purchased with her savings years ago and had been slowly improving. This resort alone was worth millions. The lawyer showed me estimates close to $9 million. My children had no idea this existed. I realized their hunger was not just for the house we lived in, but for every penny of my wife's legacy. And suddenly, the battle wasn't just about a house. It was about a fortune. Adil had been lying all along, pretending the house was the only asset. Sana's cruelty was motivated by this secret wealth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about my wife's wisdom, my children's betrayal, and what I had to do next. Because if I lost this fight, I'd lose everything: my home, my dignity, and my future. But if I won, I could finally take back control and start a new chapter. The tension in the house finally exploded one evening when Adil stormed into my room, furious. His face was red, voice trembling. Dad, you're ruining everything, he shouted. You don't understand how the world works anymore. Sign the papers or we're cutting you out completely. I looked at him, feeling both sadness and resolve. This wasn't just a fight over property anymore. It was a fight for respect, for dignity. Sarah tried to calm him down, but she looked helpless, torn between loyalty to her brother and her father. I won't sign, I said calmly. Not until this is settled properly. Adil's anger turned to bitter disappointment. You're not the man I thought you were. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. That night, the house was colder than ever. I packed a small bag and left for a friend's place. I needed space to think, to heal. As I sat alone, I realized this was more than a family dispute. It was a battle for my life. At my friend's home, I finally allowed myself to break down. Years of silence, sacrifice, and betrayal crashed into tears. But in those moments of pain, I found clarity. My wife had bought the resort quietly, a place my children didn't even know existed. The lawyer explained, this resort could be your way out. It's not just a property, it's a business, a new start. For the first time in years, I felt hope. I realized I didn't have to be a prisoner of their greed. I could fight back, I could win, but that fight wouldn't be easy. Adil and Sana weren't going to give up. They even tried to seize what little money I had left, but this time I was ready. A few days later, the lawyer sent a thick envelope filled with documents. Shares, land deeds, bank statements, contracts, all under my wife's name, all legally mine now, he wrote. Your wife's investments were designed to protect you not just from outsiders, but from family who might try to take advantage. Reading those papers, I felt a mix of pride and sadness. Pride in her foresight, sadness at the betrayal from my own blood. The lawyer advised me to prepare for court. Adil and Sana had already started legal maneuvers, but I had the truth, and the law, on my side. This was no longer just about money. It was about justice, about family, about respect. The courtroom was packed the day our battle began. My son, daughter-in-law, and their lawyer sat across from me, faces full of cold determination. They tried to paint me as an old man who had lost his mind, saying I was no longer fit to handle my affairs. But I was ready. My lawyer presented the secret will, the property deeds, and the proof of ownership. The documents showed clearly that everything, the house, the resort, the land belonged to me, not to them. I watched their faces change, their confident smirks fading into desperation. The judge listened carefully, and after hours of arguments and evidence, ruled in my favor. I had won back my rights, but this was just the beginning. That day, I stood at my front door, keys in hand as my daughter-in-law screamed, and my son begged me to forgive them. Please, Dad, don't do this, Adil cried. We made mistakes, let's fix this. Sana yelled, you don't belong here anymore. But I stood firm. Sarah came forward and confessed everything, how Sana pressured them, how they lied. My heart ached. The betrayal ran deep, but so did the love I still felt for my children. I told them calmly, you must face the consequences of your actions. The house was mine again, but the family I knew was gone. The offer was from a business partner of my late wife. They wanted me to buy the resort, the secret jewel she had built over the years. I didn't hesitate. The moment I signed the papers, I felt alive again. The staff welcomed me warmly, the place buzzing with energy. This wasn't just a property, it was my new beginning. But then my family showed up unexpectedly, uninvited, hoping to claim a piece of it. I realized then the war wasn't over. It had only moved to a bigger stage, but this time I was ready to fight differently. The resort had become my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe, plan, and heal. But peace was short-lived. Just weeks after I took full ownership, my family showed up again. Not quietly, not with apologies. They arrived like storm clouds, ready to cast shadows over everything I had fought for. Adil stood at the entrance, flanked by Sana and Sarah. Their eyes held a mix of desperation and calculation. It was clear they had come to manipulate their way back into my life and the resort. Sana was the first to speak, her voice sweet but sharp. Dad, this resort is part of our family's legacy. We want to be involved. Let's work together. I looked at her calmly, seeing the old woman I once trusted replaced by someone I barely recognized. Sana, this isn't just about a legacy anymore. This is about respect. Adil stepped forward, trying to soften his tone. We made mistakes, but we can fix this together. The resort is big enough for all of us. I shook my head. It's not big enough for lies and betrayal. Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. Dad, please, can't we just move past this? I'm sorry for everything. Her apology stirred something inside me, but I was too hurt, too cautious. No, I said firmly. I've learned the hard way that forgiveness isn't just about saying sorry. It's about actions that prove change. They looked shocked, maybe expecting me to break down or give in. Instead, I told them something I never thought I'd say. You're no longer welcome here." The words hung heavy in the air. Sana gasped, Adil's face turned pale, and Sarah looked heartbroken. "But, Dad," Sarah whispered, "we're family." I nodded. Family doesn't hurt each other like this, not without consequences. I explained that the resort was my fresh start, my way to reclaim dignity and happiness. If they truly wanted to rebuild trust, it would take time and genuine effort, not demands or manipulation. That day, I set firm boundaries. For the first time, I stood for myself without fear, and I realized that sometimes the hardest battle is the one where you say no to those you love for your own peace. After that last confrontation, a quiet settled over the resort, a peaceful silence that felt almost strange after months of chaos, but I welcomed it. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe deeply again. Living here, surrounded by nature and friendly faces, I began to rebuild not just my property but myself. Each morning, I'd wake up early and walk through the gardens, feeling the cool breeze and the warm sun on my face. The staff greeted me with genuine smiles, not just out of respect for ownership, but because this place had become my second home. Without the constant pressure of family drama, I found space to think clearly. I started making plans, not for fighting, but for living. I enrolled in a local community group, met people who valued kindness and honesty, and found joy in simple moments. It was like discovering a part of me I had forgotten, the part that wasn't just a father or a property owner, but a person with dreams and strength. The resort flourished too. With new energy and care, I made small improvements, adding touches that reflected my wife's vision and my renewed spirit. But healing isn't a straight path. One afternoon, Sarah came to the resort unannounced. She looked nervous but hopeful. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm sorry for everything, for the lies, the pressure. I didn't know what I was doing." Her words stirred old wounds, but also a flicker of warmth. "I know," I replied honestly, "and I believe you, but it's going to take time for trust to grow back." We talked for hours that day about pain, mistakes, and the family we once were. Sarah promised to change, to be honest and open, not just with me, but with herself. It wasn't a perfect fix. There were moments of doubt, hesitation, and pain. But it was a beginning, and for me, that was enough. I learned that forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. That freedom comes when you release bitterness and make space for growth. Most importantly, I discovered that no matter how deep the wounds, healing is possible if you choose to fight for it. Months have passed since I closed the door on that painful chapter of my life. Sitting here now, looking out at the calm waters of the resort's lake, I find myself reflecting on everything I've been through. What started as a fight over property became so much more. It became a test of character, mine and theirs. I learned that money can build houses and resorts, but it cannot build respect. And respect, genuine respect, is what we all truly need. I've watched how my children changed, or rather, how their greed revealed who they really were. It wasn't about love or family. It was about control, possession, and selfishness. But I also saw the power of forgiveness, the possibility of healing. Sarah's efforts to make amends gave me hope that maybe one day family could be rebuilt on new, stronger foundations. I want to say this to everyone listening to my story. Never let anyone convince you that you don't matter because of your age or situation. Never let greed make you doubt your worth. And most importantly, never let money blind you to what really counts. Respect is earned through kindness, honesty, and standing up for yourself. Respect is what keeps families together or tears them apart when it's missing. Today, I own a beautiful resort, a place my wife dreamed of, and I fought to claim. But the greatest victory isn't the property or the money. It's the lesson I carry in my heart every day. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there standing up against betrayal, and reminds you that your worth is never defined by others' greed.